Good afternoon. Welcome to the Big Show. The Big Show is what we do every single day, or at least most days, and try to wrap up sort of what happened today. Maybe take a look at what went on or what will go on tomorrow. Obviously, in the world of sports, that's how we do it. Hopefully, you all had a very good Memorial Day weekend. 4 days off is sometimes hard to come back from, and of course, well, 3, I guess. But the long weekend sometimes can be really difficult to come back from. And let's face it, really, the Friday before Memorial Day is almost useless, too, as a day, because nobody really is all that interested in working, and a lot of places let you out early. So to me, at the end of the day, what we're sitting here talking about are your Steelers. Now, not a whole lot really has changed between when was the last time we talked, Friday or Thursday or whatever it is. But I really think that this whole thing with OTAs starting today makes it really, really kind of interesting to see how they are going to form their team. Now, there's a couple things I think that are significant. And obviously the big one, the one we've been talking about for, I don't know, as long as I can remember, the big one is that Aaron Rodgers is not obviously in OTAs. I don't know that anybody's surprised by that. Don't know that really we all care by that. But it's one of those things where I just tell you, it's important to note that without him, there's just a lot of real uncertainty going on these days. And that's what I would tell you where we're at. There's just a lot of real uncertainty with the Steelers. And so to me, it's we've got to figure out now other parts of the team. Now, I've read some other stuff. I really have that is going to be, important to note. It's just one of those things where we have to try and figure this out. It's going to be. I look at, for instance, this idea about Kirk Cousins. Okay, Kirk Cousins. I feel like it's going to be important to note that this is a slow time of year, and it's a time of year when I think that we have to try and figure out what it is that is going to get us through as reporters. And so there's a lot of stories that just get floated out there simply because people need content every day. And I will say that's the most important thing from that standpoint. It's important, really, to understand that sometimes these stories get floated out there. And I think the guest of the story today was Jeremy Fowler, basically saying that Kirk Cousins, the Steelers actually might have him on their radar, that he's got some indications from some people in the organization and all that other stuff, that it's going to be important to remember, and it's going to be important to note that, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't come, they look at Kirk Cousins as sort of a plan B. I got to be honest with you, I can't think of a worse idea than making a trade for Kirk Cousins. Not a worse idea that I could come up with. Because you think Aaron Rodgers is done. How about Kirk Cousins? Here's a guy to me who just basically is a guy who last year, he basically, threw for 18 touchdowns and 16 interceptions. I just don't get it, man. He's done. And I don't think he was all that good. He's always been a guy that you can win games with. You don't win playoff games with him. He's always been a guy who's been good, but not quite good enough, period. So I feel like it's going to be important to note that, we have to sit here and talk about things like Kirk Cousins simply because somebody reported, we think Kirk Cousins is a guy who is going to be who's going to be on the market, and the Steelers need a quarterback. And because the Steelers need a quarterback, let's connect the dots. And, we asked somebody in the Steelers organization, and they didn't really dismiss it, they didn't really dismiss it, right? So therefore, since they didn't really fully dismiss it, it's one of those things where, hey, guess what? I don't think that, since they didn't fully dismiss it, I don't think that it's necessarily 100% wrong. So I'm going to go with, this idea that somehow there's this idea out there that, the Steelers might be in on this idea that, the Steelers might be in on Kirk Cousins, or maybe it's plan B, or however it was worded. But Kirk Cousins can't play anymore. And he's enormously expensive. I'm not sure why they would do that. So to me, I don't think there's anything to it. I don't think that there's anything to it. I wish I could sit here and tell you there was, but I really don't think that there was or is. I think one of the biggest things is important to remember, okay, is that it is going to be so hard for people to get through these next months. Okay, because all of these stories are going to continue to come at you, and most of them are probably just going to be reporters who are just sort of taking a leaps in logic. They're not necessarily reporting anything, but what they are doing, right, is basically going to be, saying, oh, well, I kind of think this, based on a conversation I had, I kind of think that, all of this stuff. You know what I mean? That's what I think is really the reality. And so to me, I feel like we are sitting here talking about, Kirk Cousins, the day after Memorial Day, because there's not much else going on. Now, of course, there are some people who are upset because Aaron Rodgers isn't here for OTAs. I don't think I care, really. And listening to the interviews with the guys that were, that are actually on the, the guys who have actually been on the team, or the guys that are actually at the OTAs, listening to them talk today, I don't think any of them care either. I thought it was hilarious when someone asked Mason Rudolph if he's reached out or talked to Aaron Rodgers, and his answer was basically the guy's not on the roster. He's not my teammate. So, no, I'm just sort of focused on what I have to do here. I kind of like that. I kind of like that. And I think one of the things is it feels to me like we are always, driven by these stories and rumors, because that's what really the media, the expectations of the media has been in recent years. It just is kind of one of those things where I feel like it's going to be really, really bad for the next month. And especially if Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign with the Steelers. What if he doesn't sign, or he waits until the beginning of training camp to sign, right? All of those things would lead to a whole long summer of the same stories over and over and over again, period. And I think that's what we are doing. And I think when we talk about it that way, it's just that's where this Kirk Cousins stuff comes. I can't believe for one second, however, the Steelers are interested in the Steelers. I can't believe that the Steelers are interested in Kirk Cousins. I really can't. That's what I would tell you. So it's going to be, another wait and see day or two with respect to Kirk Cousins. Now, or with respect to Aaron Rodgers. Now, with that being said, there are some things at OTAs that we can actually talk about that are kind of interesting. First things first. Broderick Jones is the starting left tackle. Troy Fautanu is the starting right tackle. We kind of knew this, but until we saw them on the field, we didn't know that. But we do, and it was confirmed by those two today that's how the reps were split. The first team reps were split that way, and that's what happened. And that's why the reason I bring it up is because we talked about the offensive line being a key to this team this year, right? And that's going to be the key to this team, the offensive line. We can talk about, we can talk about all of the other things that we talk about all the time. We can talk about that. We can talk about, quarterback. We can talk about, running back. We can talk about receiver. We can talk about all these other things. The reality is the offensive line is the key to everything. And if the offensive line isn't good, it doesn't really matter what everything else happens. So really, it's now an important thing. In my mind, it's an important thing that we say, hey, you have to look at the offensive line as being different. Because the reality is you've got a new left tackle who hasn't played left tackle for you, and a right tackle who was hurt all last year. That's what I would tell you. It's so if they're as good as advertised, both were first-round picks, both were selected in the first round for a reason. It's just one of those things where, honestly, you have to note that or understand that. Period. Like, they were both drafted in the first round, and they're, allegedly are going to be really good eventually. So I feel like it's going to be important that, they move forward with this. I feel like it's going to be important that they move forward with all of this stuff. And I feel like that's going to be what we need to focus on, the offensive line. And if you look at the offensive line and what it is, I mean, I think at least now you've got 3, if not 4 of your positions that are solidified, and you've got a chance to have continuity over the course of a few years now. That's assuming Broderick Jones is good enough. And that's assuming that Troy Fautanu is good enough. But that's, to me, if you look at the line, I think you've got some really good options. And so it's now, or now what you have really, in so many ways, you've got, Broderick Jones, Mason McCormick, Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier. You've got 4, pretty young, inexperienced kind of guys. And you've got Ciamolo, who's a veteran who might be the best of them all. But my point is, this has a chance to, build an offensive line. And they talked about the offensive line as being something that they built first in Philadelphia. And that's how they built that team in Philadelphia. So when I look at it like that, I just say, hey, it's important really if you continue to make your offensive line better, which is what they're trying to do, then, to me, it's going to be a situation of where the offense will mysteriously get better, right? Your quarterbacks will look better. Everybody will look better if the offensive line is better. And I think that's the key. I really do. I think that's the key. And so I feel like now we have to just talk about who or what the offensive line is. Like I said, 4 of the guys are going to be there for a number of years and were drafted to be there for a number of years. When we talk about it like this, we talk about it like this quite often, but the offensive line has probably been something that has been a weakness. And it's probably been something that is as much of to blame for some of the problems with the offense as anything. I mean, we've talked about Matt Canada. We've talked about, Arthur Smith. We've talked about, Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky and all the other guys. Russell Wilson. The offensive line has been a big part of the problem. The second part of that equation and the second part of the problem has been receiver. And, of course, they bring in DK Metcalf. And in bringing in DK Metcalf, they immediately improved the receiver room. Okay? And so now you looked at it, you said, hey, there's now 2 high-level receivers and all this other stuff. Well, guess what? They traded George Pickens. Now you only have 1. But what that means basically is that we are going to see some of these other guys maybe get an opportunity. Robert Woods is a guy who, obviously they brought him in. He's a veteran guy. I hope he's not one of your starters, because if he is, it's probably a problem. But I can already tell the guy that we're going to hear about all summer is Roman Wilson. Just by basically all the things I've read about Roman Wilson, that's what he's going to be. Okay? All summer long, it is going to be a situation of where we're going to hear about how great Roman Wilson is, just like we heard about Calvin Austin, for years and years and years and years and years. I hope we're right. I hope the people that are covering the team are right. That Roman Wilson is a guy that you really look at and you think, yeah, he can be a really good player. I hope they're right. But I also know this. There's a good chance they're not right. There's a good chance they're not. And so for me, I still think they need another receiver. But again, a lot of it changes if your offensive line plays at a high level. A lot of it changes. And that's what I think. You have an offensive line last year that wasn't good. It showed in too many games. It showed in too many situations. When they needed a yard, or they needed 2 yards or 3 yards, it showed. And as a result of that, you know what? I don't feel like, we really fully understood how good the offense could be or how bad it could be, because it was just sort of an incomplete unit. I don't care how good you are. If your offensive line stinks, you stink. That's the thing. If your offensive line stinks, then you stink. Period. And that's what I would tell you where we're at with it. I just feel like the offensive line has to get better. And if they do, the receivers will look better. And if the receivers look better, then I think that it's going to be really important to note that the offense will be better, period. And that's really what I'm going to tell you. I think we need to figure this all out. And to me, it starts with the offensive line and everything else that goes with it. I feel like it's going to be important also then to realize that it's good to note that there are a lot of really good opportunities here in this OTAs and training camp for players to earn jobs, period. And so that's going to be the storyline. And hopefully we spend a lot of time talking about that storyline and not all the other crap. Period. I don't really care about a lot of the other stuff. Just don't really care. And I feel like, you know what, the quarterback stuff will solve itself. The quarterback stuff will figure it out. But if the offensive line is good enough and the receivers are good enough, you know what, I think the Steelers probably are good enough. They can win games like that, regardless if it's Mason Rudolph or Aaron Rodgers. But we'll see. By the way, the game's always on at Archie's. Archie's, home of 80 cent wings, Monday through Thursday. Home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. So when you get down to Archie's, Say hello to Archie for me. Tell him I sent you. And, of course, we'll always have a good time at Archie's. The Pirates are still sort of floundering. But here's the thing that's really frustrating about the Pirates. More than anything else is that I have no idea what the plan is. Like, there was a point when Ben Cherington took over, maybe a year or two into the thing, right, where I said, okay, I know what the plan is. I can figure it out. I can build it. I can do all that kind of stuff. And I think that's the thing. That's the thing that's going to happen. I feel like it's now important to note that really we have to be able to ascertain what the plan is in order to just feel like there's some future here or something going on here in the future. But there doesn't feel like it. It really doesn't feel like it. It feels like they're just bringing guys up at random and filling holes at random, and there's no rhyme or reason for who gets called up and who doesn't get called up. I look at some of these lineups, and I keep saying to myself, well, what are they doing? But then I remember, well, wait a minute. If you really think about it, what choice do they have? Because they just don't have many guys, you know? And that's the thing that's really, really, really happening. I think it's going to be one of these things where, I mean, I just feel like you look at these lineups, people are complaining about who's batting fourth and who's batting sixth and who's batting fifth and who's batting leadoff. I mean, when one of your best hitters is 38-year-old Andrew McCutchen, I just don't get, what else we're going to talk about. I've said many times, there's no reason for Tommy Pham to still be here. There's no reason for Adam Frazier to be here. If it was me, I would have Henry Davis be the DH every game for the rest of the season. See what he can do. Why do I need to see Andrew McCutchen play ever again? You're not kidding anybody. You're not winning. You're not trying to win. You're not kidding anybody by putting Andrew McCutchen out there and hoping that, he gets a few hits and they win a game. That's just not the truth. That's just not how it is. To me, if put Henry Davis out there every day, guess what? If he goes 0, so I don't know, say what do they have, about 110 games left? If he goes 0 for 440, it doesn't matter. At least then you know what you have in him. I'd rather do that than watch Andrew McCutchen go out there, more than just like on a Sunday to give somebody a break. And I love Andrew McCutchen. I think he's, an all-time great. They should, think even maybe about retiring his number if you think about it in some ways. At the end of the day, we don't need to see him play anymore. We don't need to see Tommy Pham play anymore. We don't need to see Adam Frazier play anymore. And can someone please explain to me why in the world you have Jared Triolo? I don't understand that one either. Why do you have Jared Triolo play ever? Ever? He stinks. He's the classic example. Him and Jack Sawinski, classic example of quad A players that the Pirates try and force feed on anybody. It makes no sense at all. And I don't really get it. I don't really understand it that much. So, to me, when you look at all of the totality of this thing, it's really hard to understand some of the decisions they made. And I've said this before, they need Brian Reynolds to get hot for like a month so they can trade him. Right? I mean, the Canario, Alexander Canario, I know, he's had some hits and people are starting to get excited about what he could be and what he is. I need to see a whole lot more before I'm ready to say this is the guy. Right? But Jared Triolo is batting 136. He's batting 136. His slash line is 136, 214, 250. 250 isn't his on-base percentage. That's his slugging percentage. Why is he still playing? You know, Joey Bart is serviceable, I guess. He's hitting 241 with 1 home run. Slugging percentage is 310. I mean, if you look at the OPS of this team, it's ridiculous. It's just, you know, Cruz is 859. Nobody else is over 800. How about that? I should say nobody that's qualified, like for league, you know, league leaders. Nobody is over 800 except for O'Neal Cruz. And taking it one step further, nobody's over 700 except for Andrew McCutchen. And your next best guy is Adam Frazier. And Brian Reynolds is next. I mean, what are they doing? What is their plan? I just don't know what their plan really is. I wish I did, but I don't know. You know, I really don't know what their plan is. So to me, you know, it's one of those things where you've got to just sort of hang in there, I guess, maybe, and hope that something, you know, that sort of mirrors a plan comes to fruition. But you've got, you know, just way too much dead weight on this team. Way too much dead weight. You know, Reynolds is batting 208. Hayes, 229. You know, Cruz has been on a mission and he's up to 238. I mean, you know, Pham is at 198. I mean, what are we talking about here? Triola 136, Davis 174. I mean, can't even look at this anymore. This team is just bad, but you can be bad if there's a plan. There's not a plan here. That's the problem. There's not a plan here. And because there's not a plan, man, I just got to be honest with you. I'm just not sure where or what's going to go, you know, what they're going to go forward with, period. And so I think it's important now to note that, you know, you go through this list of players and everything else, and you basically say there's too many guys that are old, too many guys that aren't going to be a part of the future, that are playing too many innings and getting too many of the at-bats. I mean, to me, I feel like it becomes a thing of where, the Cherington era, we all know it's got to end. I don't know if he knows it's got to end, but everybody else knows it's got to end. And if it doesn't end anytime soon, I don't know what to tell you. Because the Pirates are in a place right now. I just feel like it's really, really difficult to really get excited about it. So here's the thing to me. I feel like it's going to be important to really get after. It's going to be important to really, you know, for them to figure out what they want the next steps to be, because I don't think they know what it's going to be or how it's going to be. But at any rate, it's just kind of sad. I was reading, actually, the other thing I was reading, the Penguins are, I guess, interviewing people, kind of. I mean, eventually, I guess they'll hire somebody, but who knows who that's going to be. It just seems to me like the process is very weird. But at any rate, hopefully you all had a good Memorial Day. We'll do it again tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have more to talk about with the Steelers. And until then, we'll see you.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.